Dear brothers and sisters, we're about to start the second session, so can you please come in? And we would appreciate if we can bring ourselves to a bit of silence during this time. So I know there's a lot to talk about, a lot of friends that we are seeing here, maybe after a long time, but we'll have more break times and lunch time to come. So could you please bring yourself to a silence as we begin the second session. Once again, dear brothers and sisters, please come in immediately. And we'd like to remind you that there are no booking of seats here. So please, if you are having a handbag laying around, please remove it. We would like everybody to enjoy this conference. So please, no booking of seats. For the rest of us, can we be still as we're about to begin the second session? Once again, we would like to thank His Grace, Most Reverend Julian Lau, Archbishop of Kuala Lumpur, for staying with us, continuing to join this conference with us on this lovely Saturday. I know it's been raining quite a lot, but it looks like we've got some sunshine today. Yeah? So, if we can, we had promised that we want to start on time. So we'll begin with the second session. Once again, our speakers is Father Andrew Manikam and Professor Anthony Chan. And the second session will begin as I would like to invite Father Andrew Manikam to kick off the second session. Please, a warm welcome for Father Andrew.
The second session that I would like to begin with this topic called Adoration as a means of building intimacy with Christ. Adoration as a means of building intimacy with Christ. That's one word that you and I need to capture this morning. And the word is contemplation. The lay vocation, next slide. The lay vocation is no barrier to contemplation. Indeed, the magisterium or the teachings of the church teaches that while consecrated men and women are made by nature of their state of life more open to the experience of contemplation, it would be wrong to think that ordinary Christians can be content with a shallow prayer that is unable to fill their whole life. Now, this is taken from a very important apostolic letter from Pope St. John Paul II. Thus, for the lay Christian, the question is not if to contemplate, but how. Because when we talk about adoration, it is also a time of contemplation, where we take time to be with the Eucharistic Lord. And it's very important that we build this aspect of contemplation so that we could become a contemplative person in our own ways. That this contemplative life is not just reserved for some, but it is a call for everyone. For everyone. And it is very interestingly to know that amongst the spiritual traditions of the church, the magisterium, the teachings of the church, repeatedly proposes adoration as a means for contemplation, as Christ is fully present in the Eucharist. Now, all these are taken from this apostolic letter by John Paul II at the close of the Great Jubilee year, 2000. We can also go back to some of the experiences of the people of the Old Testament, just to give us an understanding why to be a contemplative person is important, why contemplation is very important in our spiritual journey. If you look back at the very life of Moses in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus chapter 34, Moses, in conversing with God, was radiant as a result. And we see this clearly even in the very life of Prophet Elijah. When he went up to Mount Horeb, and there he listened to the voice of God. And in that experience of listening to the voice of God, he went back to his mission. He went back where he was running from. So this experience of contemplation is important in our spiritual journey. And St. John Paul II would say, next slide. Next slide. Next one. I encourage Christians regularly to visit Christ present in the Blessed Sacrament. For we are all called to abide in the presence of God. In contemplation, Christians will perceive ever more profoundly the mystery at the heart of the Christian life. And we have the words of St. Mother Teresa: the time you spend with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament is the best time you spend on earth. Each moment that you spend with Jesus will deepen your union with Him and make your soul everlastingly more glorious and beautiful in heaven, and will help bring about everlasting peace on earth. As what Professor Chan said, that in spite of a busy, hectic life, Mother Teresa took time to adore Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. Now, this is an important reminder how contemplation plays a very important part in our spiritual life. So, I would say that contemplative life is for all. It's for all. It's not just for the monks. It's not just for the nuns behind the metal grates. Since most of us are called in an active life, we assumed that we are disqualified from contemplation. But if we look a bit deeper into the Christian tradition, we see that contemplative prayer is actually a normal part of the Christian life to be experienced by everyone. Everyone. Certainly, there are religious orders, especially dedicated to contemplation. But there are also orders like the missionaries of charity, especially dedicated to the works of mercy. Does that mean the rest of us can forget about mercy? Special vocations like this exist to be a perpetual reminder to all of us of something we too are called to be and to do. Again, if we look back at the Old and New Testament, we see very active people called by God to special moments of contemplation, prayer. Moses spent 40 days and nights with God on Mount Sinai. Elijah encountered God in a still, small voice, found restoration and renewed vision. The Lord Jesus himself withdrew to spend hours in prayer. And the best example of contemplation in the midst of action is the story of Martha and Mary in the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 10. Jesus comes to visit. Martha was occupied with so many works. Mary stops, sits at his feet, and listens. She gives him a undivided attention. Now, this is our part of making contemplative prayer happen. We simply make ourselves available to God and focus on His presence. There's no better place to do this before the Blessed Sacrament. That is why the Blessed Sacrament, you do not use any kind of methods of prayer. You just have to sit and be available to God. And His presence is most intensely experienced in two ways. Through His inspired word and in the sacrament of His body and blood. So contemplative life is suspended between the two poles, the Bible and the Eucharist. The Bible and the Eucharist. To focus on God's presence is easier said than done. I'm sure you heard the testimony of Professor Chan earlier. It's not easy to sit before the Lord and to contemplate. Sometimes when we do that, we're always looking at our watch. Is it an hour? So it takes lots of practice, lots of spiritual discipline to cultivate this aspect of contemplation. In every age, the necessary chores of everyday life, earning a living, homemaking, parenting, relationships, have a tendency to completely absorb us if we let them. Now, this was Martha's problem. Yet we have an additional obstacle that Martha did not have. Modern media, which invades every nook and cranny of our lives. Wireless internet, access all hours of the day and night, wherever we are, in the church, in the chapel, in our dining table. Modern life has magnified the distraction factor. And that is why, my dear friends, we need moments of contemplation to survive and thrive amidst this craziness. It's not just about doing and doing and doing. I believe the Lord is not asking us to become workaholics. Doing and doing and doing. I'm sure the Lord is also inviting us to take time to withdraw, to be one with Him. And the best way of doing that is to come before the Blessed Sacrament. A place where you can be yourself and to be with the Lord. You know, when you are with someone, sometimes you can't be with yourself actually. You can't carry your real self. You have to become somebody else in front of your superior, in front of your employer. You carry not the real self, but an adopted self. But before the Lord, you can be the person that you are actually. And because Jesus knows you in and through. And this one way of how you can come into His presence and make yourself available to Him. Because graces will flow from that experience. Yes, my dear friends, it is very, very important that we take time to ponder, especially when we talk about Eucharistic adoration. Because Eucharistic adoration gives us a great moment for us to be with the Lord. And to know, as what the psalmist would say, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. One of the best way to look or to help us in this whole practice of contemplation is to look up at the Blessed Mother, Blessed Virgin Mary. Pope St. John Paul II, in his apostolic letter on the Most Holy Rosary, which came up on October the 16th, 2002, this little document that I have here. I hope that you have seen this document. A very beautiful document. You should get one also. Now, in this document, John Paul II says, Mary is the greatest Christian contemplative. No one has ever devoted himself to the contemplation on the face of Christ as faithfully as Mary. We don't see this aspect of Mary. We always see her as a person who is always with her Son, journeying with the Son, always at the forefront. But here we also have another picture of Mary. A contemplative Mary, a contemplative mother. And in the same apostolic letter, in paragraph 10, it is said, Mary's gaze ever filled with adoration and wonder would never leave him. Mary not only looked upon her Son, but even pondered what she saw and heard in silent meditation, keeping watch in prayer. St. John Paul II also said, Mary lived with her eyes fixed on Christ, treasuring His every word. The memories of Jesus impressed upon her heart were always with her, leading her to reflect on the various moments of her life at her Son's side. Very profoundly written by Pope St. John Paul II. So Mary is the model contemplative. And Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, next slide, declared, next slide, that Mary was the teacher of adoration, because no one has been able better than Mary to contemplate Jesus with a gaze of faith and to accept in his or her heart the deep resonance of his human and divine presence. So in one way of helping into this whole experience of being a contemplative person is to look up at the Blessed Mother. It's also important for us that we take time to read what St. John Paul II has written in this little booklet, in this document. Because sometimes we can be carried away with so many of our activities, even parish activities. Sometimes we do all the planning, all the activities, without taking time to be with the Lord. We don't go to the Lord, but we make lots of plans and activities. And that is why it's a very challenging moment for all of us, for you and for me, to take time to withdraw, to go to the sacred place, the church or the private room that you may have, a prayer room or the chapel, and to remain in silence and meditatively to recall your experience. In the midst of an often chaotic and challenging world, Mary is a model of adoration as one who perfectly lived her active life as wife and mother with a truly contemplative spirit. Now, this is very important. So our lives as Christians must be a balanced life. Active, contemplative. Both has to be balanced. Not just active and not just contemplative. It calls for a balance. And that is why the scripture text taken from Luke's Gospel, chapter 10, gives us a kind of a spirituality. Active, contemplative. Martha represents the active life. Mary represents the contemplative life. So this is the kind of spirituality that you and I need to practice wherever we are. In these modern times, a time of continual movement which often leads to restlessness with the risk of doing for the sake of doing, Mary shows us how to live out one's temporal existence while being grounded in prayer and contemplation. That is how to live the lay vocation. Yes, my dear friends. Now this is important, especially for all those who are involved in parish life, in activities. We are called to live a balanced life. And St. John Paul, in one of his homily on 7th October 1989, he says this: the church tells the faithful, only by deepening our Eucharistic communion with the Lord through personal prayer can we discover what He asks of us in daily life. Only by deepening our Eucharistic communion with the Lord through personal prayer can we discover what He asks of us in daily life. This statement was given on 7th of October 1989. What I'm giving you is nothing new. all taken from the church documents, because we need to go back. We need to read what the church teaches. That if you are today called to live an active life, it has to flow from the contemplative life. Remember earlier I shared with you John's Gospel, chapter 15. I am the vine, you are the branches. If today we want to become a fruitful person in the ministry, in the vocation, definitely it has to go back to our contemplative life. Now this is very, very important, my dear friends. And I pray that this Congress, this Eucharistic Congress will help you to take time to be with the Lord. This is the beautiful of the Catholic Church actually. The beauty of the Catholic Church is that you have a place where you can contemplate. Whether in the church, whether in the chapel, Jesus is there, His presence is there. You can just sit down with Him, talk to Him, listen to Him, what He has to say to you. And in that way, you are also empowering yourself. So, with all that we have in the church, we must make or utilize it. The prayer room. We take time to go for the adoration. When the parish organize adoration, whether weekly adoration, monthly adoration, take time to be with the Lord. In that way, you are cultivating your spiritual life. So adoration as a means of building intimacy with Christ has to begin from this aspect. That is, being a contemplative person. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 2724, says, a gaze of faith, fixed on Jesus, a gaze of faith, fixed on Jesus, an attentiveness to the Word of God, a silent love. By doing so, I'm sure that, you will be empowered. That you will be empowered, that you're able to carry out the apostolic life in a very powerful way. Because we take time to be with the Lord. And that is why in the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus called His first disciples, He did not send them immediately to the mission field. You don't see that happening in Mark's Gospel. In Mark's Gospel, the first invitation was to be with Him, to be with Him. Only then He sent them out, to reach out, to go into the mission field, to be with Him. Today, we need to deepen that experience to be with Him. Because all of us, you and me, we are all good to carry out, to do things for Christ, to do things for the church, which is good. We need to become like Marthas. But let us not also forget that we are also called to become Marys, to be with Jesus, to sit at His feet, to listen to His voice, to ask for clarity before we embark on certain mission, before we carry out certain apostolate, before we make any important decisions, to be with Him, to be with Him. Now this is important. This is important. And we see this very clearly in the lives of the disciples in Mark's Gospels, in the Gospel of St. Mark, to be with Him. So I pray that this session will help us, you and me, to become a contemplative person. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Andrew. Dear brothers and sisters, just one short important announcement. We urgently need the owner of car number plate BJY9008 to please repark your car. We have a medical emergency. Once again, the owner of car number plate BJY, B for Bangkok, Japan, yellow, 9008. Please repark your car immediately. Thank you. And to continue session 2, once again, please welcome Professor Anthony Chan.
I continue to share what happens after I made a small promise to Jesus that in the rest of my life, I will never make him sad again. I didn't know how to do that. I had never spent more than 3 minutes before each time I received Eucharist. So I read in Medjugorje, which is still under church investigation. The Blessed Mother tells us to kneel down, to spend at least 10 minutes after receiving Eucharist. And as a lay person, not experienced in contemplative prayer at that time at all, I was totally ignorant. What am I going to do in that 10 long minutes? But because Blessed Mother tells us to do that, so my simple answer is, just do it. Because the Bible says that if you love me, you do what I tell you. And in the Bible, if you do what Jesus said, and the Blessed Mother said, it's same as what Jesus told us, so just do it. So 14 years ago, I started my adoration about 21, 22 years ago, and about 14 years ago, after some years of adoration, that was my experience that's how Saint Faustina taught me how to receive Eucharist again. So from that time on, each time after I received Eucharist after Mass, during the Mass, I would spend 10 minutes. There was not enough time during Mass to spend 10 minutes after receiving Eucharist to kneel down. If we leave 10 minutes, some of the priests told me that if after the communion, if the priest leave 10 minutes of silence during the Mass, then some people are going to leave. Unfortunately, they are forced to finish up the Mass earlier. But I can stay behind. So after the Mass, I may have only 4 minutes after receiving Eucharist. So after Mass, I can stay behind and spend the rest of the 10 minutes, maybe 6 more minutes plus the 4 minutes, that will be 10 minutes, in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And 6 minutes is quite easy. It's not long. However, I share with you my witness, I think, again. After a while, I began to feel very uncomfortable and embarrassed because everybody has left already. And I'm leaving behind, kneeling down. It looks like I was a hypocrite trying to be pious. And I feel that people are laughing at me. I felt so embarrassed that I didn't want to continue. But anyway, was there anybody laughing at me? They're gone already, so who is left laughing at me? It is the ghost, right? the Satan, the enemy. Anytime we want to be intimate with Jesus, the enemy will try desperately to stop us. So it's the enemy putting in the mind that people are laughing at me and tell me, don't be stupid to stay behind. So that was the third thing I share with you about adoration. When you decide to spend time 1 hour every week to enable perpetual adoration in your parish, your enemy will not give up and try to persuade you not to continue. In my witnesses, I totally do not have strength to continue at all because I didn't know about that. So in my embarrassment, I was so tempted to stop. But I didn't. The reason I didn't is because I made a promise to Jesus. I had promised him to the rest of my life whenever I receive him, I am not going to make him sad again. So no matter how embarrassed, I continue that 10 minutes. So that is the fourth thing I want to share with you about adoration, is to make a commitment. When you make a commitment, you will be strengthened to keep the commitment. And because I continue, after a while, that 10 minutes began to change. How long does it take to do all the petitions? That was 1 or 2 minutes, right? So all the petition I need had already finished. I had nothing else to ask for. And when there's nothing else to ask for, that is the time to talk to Jesus heart to heart. I never had that before because when I finished the petition, I would leave. So I lost that precious moment to be talking to Jesus heart to heart, to feel how much Jesus loved me and how much he's not loved by me and so many other people. When all the people had left him, and tell Jesus, I will spend at least 10 minutes with you. In that 10 minutes, in that deep love of Jesus, I would often cry. And at the end of the 10 minutes, I did not want to leave. If you had ever been in a prayer with that much love, you don't want to stop. But I had to, because in my parish, there's another Mass after that. And if I don't leave the church, the next Mass is going to start soon. And I cannot live in the middle of the next Mass. However, that is 10 minutes. You do have 10 minutes. And I tell you, if you wait 10 minutes later, if you didn't wait, you will be waiting at the parking lot anyway, not being able to leave. And after 10 minutes, you can go straight out. So you are not spending more time anyway. So at the end of the 10 minutes, just like the buddy friend I mentioned before, coming to my house and visiting me, I do have a lot of things to do. But I tell my friend, okay, I had a lot of things to do. Come into my house and let us talk for 10 minutes for the time being. And at the end of the 10 minutes, tell me which hotel you're staying. Give me your phone number. When I finish my work, I will go to visit you and we'll talk for an hour. And that is why the church tells us to go to adoration 1 hour every week. I didn't learn that because I read because of reading the theology. I learned that from experience. So Eucharistic adoration is a continuation of the intimate relationship with Jesus in receiving Eucharist. So this is a 4 point about how to do adoration. It's to receive Eucharist with all the love you can. When you receive Eucharist with all the love you can, you will know how to do adoration. I cannot just say that myself from my experience. It is a sharing, but I have to make sure what I'm sharing with you is consistent with the church teaching. So I have to dig into what the church says. And you have seen that before from Bob Benedict. Eucharistic adoration is simply natural consequences of Eucharistic celebration. And conversely, when it prolongs, intensifies the experience of the Mass. I had been to many parishes trying to share the adoration so that they can have perpetual adoration. But I had also been denied by many, many parishes telling me they're too busy to have adoration. Because I'm not just giving them a witness. I want them to implement perpetual adoration afterwards. And that is what they don't want me to go there. They say they had plenty of activities. They had all these activities. The church is full. The calendar is full. We don't have time for adoration, perpetual adoration. We don't have time. But no matter how busy the parish is, you must have Mass. Because this is the highest adoration. The Mass itself is highest adoration. It is the sacrifice of Jesus himself. The church can be very busy, but you must have the Mass. But if I had only been going to the Mass, I would be going to the Mass like what I had been before. Because of adoration, I learned how to love Jesus. So it changed the way that I receive Eucharist. So that Mass experience becomes different. Conversely, because I spend the 10 minutes, put all the love I can to receive Eucharist, and I would not want to stop at the end of 10 minutes, though I long for my hour of adoration in a separate time. That was the teaching of the church. And I'm sharing with you, again, from a lay person perspective, how I understand that. St. John Paul says that the communion worship at Mass must go together, that Mass with personal worship, that's Eucharistic adoration. The Mass and Eucharistic adoration must go together in order that love may be complete. How do I understand from a lay person perspective? I married my wife. And when we married, we had the communal celebration. We celebrate, we invite our friends in the wedding sacrament, with friends, other parishioners in the church, and also we celebrated in an anniversary with family members together. So that is the time. That aspect of marriage is the communal celebration. And there's a separate part that is the time that I talk to my wife privately. Only myself and my wife talking privately. You don't have to know what I'm talking to her. If we only get married, we had the sacrament, every year we celebrate. In front of friends, we will celebrate. But I never talk to her privately. Is that marriage, is that love complete? No. That is like going to Mass without going to adoration. Conversely, if I tell her how much I love you, I love you, and we would spend time together, but I never marry her together in the sacrament, is that love complete? That is adoration without Mass. So the two together. So that was the fifth part of how to do adoration, is to participate in the Mass with all the love you can. Then you will know how to do adoration. Jesus told Faustina, remember that Jesus said that so many people hurt him? But then Jesus continued to tell Faustina, So many people have heard Jesus. That was myself in the past. And so many people have heard Jesus. He brings so much love in Eucharist, and people are hurting him by not spending time with him. And Jesus told Faustina, but you, Faustina, when you receive me, you give me love and comfort. How beautiful it is. Jesus is heard by so many people, including myself, in the past. But Faustina give Jesus the love and comfort. That is what I want to do too. Because I have heard Jesus too many times in the past. So I want to tell Jesus, I also want to give you the love and comfort in reparation of so many hurt I've caused you and of so many other people. And to whom do I learn? Faustina, because Jesus said that she gave Jesus love and comfort. So again, I asked Saint Faustina, how do you give Jesus love and comfort when you receive Eucharist? By the way, when I asked her to teach me, does that mean I will show her in apparition and teach me? Some people will, okay, but I didn't see the apparition. So learning from her means what? To read her diary. It's so simple. We learn from the saints by reading what they have already written. And some people might have a dream of the saints showing to them and so on. But I didn't have those dreams. I was basically reading what the saints have written down. So the simple thing is to read her diary. The most solemn moment in my life is when I receive the Holy Communion. I long for each communion. Today I prepare the coming of the King. What am I? And who am I? You, King of eternal glory. Oh, my heart. Are you aware who is coming to you today? Oh, if he were just a king. But he's the King of kings, the Lord of lords. You read that, right? What is Saint Faustina talking to? To whom is she talking to? Who? I mean, when you are praying, to who are you talking to? You pray to God, right? But she's not just talking to God. She's saying, oh, my heart, are you aware who is coming to you today? So who was she talking to? Herself. Why did she talk to herself? Because we receive Eucharist every Sunday. We are so used to it, it's so easy. Just stand up and take a line and then receive the Eucharist. And when it is used so easy, and we do it every Sunday, it becomes a custom. And it becomes a custom. It becomes so trivial. We become taken for granted. So that receiving Eucharist is just like a piece of cake. It is so easy to receive Eucharist. It's just like a piece of cake. And when it is so trivial, it's taken for granted that receiving Eucharist is only like eating a piece of cake. In order that I will never receive Eucharist like a piece of cake, I memorize these words myself. So that in the Mass, before I receive Eucharist, I will tell myself, oh, my heart, are you aware who is coming to you today? He's just the King. He's the King of kings, the Lord of lords. Then I go out to take the line to come out to receive Eucharist. I hear him approaching. I go out to meet him and invite him. When he entered into the dwelling of my heart, it was filled with such reverence that it fanned with fear falling at his feet. You saw that, right? You saw that on the screen. Falling at his feet. So tomorrow is Sunday Mass. So after you come out receiving Eucharist, you fall down on the floor. Is that right? If you do, I get into big trouble. But my heart can fall down. So when I return to my pew, when I kneel down, I tell my soul to prostrate at the feet of Jesus, to kiss the womb in his feet that I had so often in the past. I left my heavenly throne to become united with you. What you see is only a tiny part. But I want to tell you that eternal life must begin already here on earth through Holy Communion. I put that in white to make sure you understand it. Eternal life must begin already here on earth. So what does that mean? Eternal life. That's heaven, right? The life in heaven must begin now on earth when we receive Holy Communion. The simple explanation is that when you love someone, you want to meet someone. If your husband or wife or your children is away from home and you love them, what will you do? You long for them. You want to see them. You want to meet them, right? So if we love Jesus, what will we do? We long to see Jesus, right? So we all want to see God, right? So we all want to go to heaven, right? How many of you want to go to heaven right now? Some of them. Many of them will say, oh, wait a minute, after my child grow up, then I go to heaven. When the child has already grown up, wait a minute, not now, wait until I have grandchildren. Then I go to heaven later. So that is 10 years from now, 20 years ago, or 100 years, the better. The longer we live on earth, the better. Come on. If you really want to look for Jesus and waiting 100 years or a loved one is very painful. You love your children, right? And if you miss your children, your loved one for 10 years, you know how much hurt is that? How painful it is. But Jesus loves us so much. He does not want us to be that painful. So he wants us to see him now, without waiting for the children to grow up. We can see him now. And yet, humanly speaking, that is not possible, because the glory of God is brighter than the sun. Can our human eye in flesh look at the sun? Can we do that? And yet the glory of God is much brighter than the sun. So humanly speaking, it is not possible to look at God now. And yet, Jesus hid all his glory and humble himself in the appearance of a bread so that we can see God now. And yet when he humbled himself like that, we take him for granted. Although you have hidden yourself and concealed your beauty, my eye, enlightened by faith, reaches to you. My soul recognizes Creator. And my soul, when my heart is completely immersed in prayer of adoration. So we had to look at Eucharist with what? Not with the eyes of the flesh, but with the eyes of faith. to converse with you, O God. It's the delight of my heart. In you, I find everything that my heart could desire. So that is the 6th point in adoration. Talk to Jesus. Anything, talk to Jesus. What I talk to you, Jesus, is our secret. Even secret, we can talk to Jesus. So a lot of people will try to restrict themselves. Okay, when I come to adoration, I have to tell Jesus, oh, Jesus, I adore you, I adore you, I bless you, and so on, and keep doing that. That's good, but not only that. Say one day, somebody made you very mad. Okay? Some people make you very mad. You are very upset. And now that was your turn, your hour to go to adoration, and you're very mad. So what are you going to talk to Jesus? Are you going to say, oh, Jesus, I adore you, I bless you? No, you cannot say that anymore. So what are you going to say? Just tell Jesus that I'm mad. You can tell Jesus anything, just like a friend. And that was the 6th point in adoration. You can say anything. Although my worship is so little and poor, I am at peace because I know that you know it is sincere. However, inadequate. We will not have adequate. We can never do adoration adequately. But it doesn't matter. As long as it is sincere. I had just shared with you what it changes to me. After I made that adoration, I made that decision 22 years ago to start adoration. I was just doing it for trial. I never ask for anything. And yet, I received the gift that changed my life, my experience in Mass forever. So the Mass attendance is no longer the same than before. It also changed my family life, changed the sicknesses being cured. People without job find a job. Problem in life being solved. Divorce being saved. Marriage being saved. A lot of miracles will happen. But I share with you a different type of miracle. It is the miracle that happens in myself. You are seeing a lot of the miracle to show the real presence of Jesus. And you know that there is another miracle behind every Eucharist miracle. Of course, there's a miracle because people did not receive. When they see the miracle, they begin to believe that this is really Jesus. So they change. They will march out the procession. They start the Eucharistic adoration. They change. The people in the whole parish change. That is the miracle behind it. It is that change. Not only the parish changes, even the whole city, the whole country was changed by all this miracle. So I'm sharing with you the miracle also. These are the miracles that happens within myself. I already shared with you what changed, how I changed my experience in Mass, and I will briefly share with you the changes in my family life and the way that I serve the church. Prior to going to adoration, I love my wife, my children, and we also serve the church. And being an engineer, a scientist in career, my way, my gift is to find the problem and solve them. That is all the scientists do. You have to find the problem. When you see a problem, you try to solve it. When there's no problem, you find out some problem. And that was the way that I served the church too. So when I go to the church, participate in the work, and I will study, try to see whether there's some problem there. And then I was starting them, hey, you had a problem. And with that, I hurt people. I fight with lots of people. But I didn't say that out of the blue. I didn't say that's a problem out of the blue. I really did my study, carefully interview people to see that there are problems, there are improvements that needs to be made. And I'm absolutely sure that changes need to be done. So when people do not agree, I will fight with them. The same way I love my family. I know what is good for my family, my children, my wife, and I will tell them, explain to them, this is what we are planning to do. Unfortunately, my wife will not agree with me often because she's a woman and I'm a man. And when we do not agree, what am I going to do? Would fight with her. So I often fight. I don't mean physically, okay? I mean verbally. We fight in the family and also fight in the church. And when you fight, what are the consequences? Either lose or win. Yes, win or lose. When I lose, it was like the end of the world. I want to do something good for the family, and I cannot do it. I see some of the parishioners are not being served. I want to make those changes in the church, but I'm not allowed to do it. And I'm seeing those people having the problem to persist. I'm so upset. And when I win, what happens? What happens if you win in the fight? You're free? Big victory. Are you happy? If I am the winner, who is the loser? The other person. It's my wife. Right? So she will be upset, right? And if she's upset, can I be happy? So no matter what, I am going to lose my peace. Then after adoration, I read Faustina again. Each time a person, in her apparition, we do not see that. She sings the mantra, the ray, like the divine mercy, coming out, envelop the whole world. The blessing gives to people, men and women, children. Who are they? That's my children, my wife, the other parishioner. So if I spend an hour in adoration, Jesus is giving grace to them. So do I still need to implement the plan that I originally had? I'm sure Jesus has a much better way to give the grace to them. So instead of fighting, in which I will lose peace anyway. Then, if I explain that, if people do not agree, doesn't matter. Don't need to fight to them. Instead, spend the time with Jesus, and that will enable the grace to my family and to the people. Remember that I shared with you that I was so busy in family, in work, that I didn't have time for adoration, right? And in fact, I was also busy with one more thing. There was one more thing that I was busy about. Busy in fighting. If I said something wrong and hurt my family members, I would not be able to sleep for the whole night. And the next morning, I was so exhausted to go to work. So all those time that I spent in fighting is no longer there. I had more peace in family, in life, in the church, because I don't fight with them anymore. People are at peace with me because I don't fight with them. And I had more time to adoration. So this is my personal change. These are the miracles that happens inside myself, even myself. I was not one who is easy to give up in fighting, because as a scientist, you need to fight for what is right. My whole career is just like that. But I did. How? It's not because my camera has changed, but it's because I find something greater. And that is something called the very precious pearl. In the Bible, the merchant of pearls, diamond, precious stone, right? They're very precious. They're so precious that would you see a merchant give that to you, give that away? No, it's so precious to them. But one day, the merchant find the largest diamond in the entire world. And what did he do with all the small diamonds? They're no longer important anymore. So I overcome my stubbornness in fighting, because I find the love of Jesus much bigger than anything else. And I'm willing to give up. And then I enjoy so much peace in life. After sharing these are the changes that I had gone through, and I shared a number of ways to adoration. I am going to continue to share share one point before the end, before I come back, okay? Now, I didn't work with you before on what you're expecting today. And I put down 4 elements. I don't know why you registered for this conference, right? I don't know why. But there are 4 things that I put down. First thing is to make a commitment. To seriously consider making a commitment. If I never made a commitment 22 years ago, I would be like what I had before. I would have spent the rest of my life like that. Never spending more than 3 minutes after Eucharist, and just go to church and still okay, but I never find that intimacy with Jesus. And making that commitment is not easy for many people. In principle, it is easy because you have 1,000 people in the parish. If only 300 and some people, you will have 7 days, 24-hour perpetual adoration. But in reality, because of my weaknesses, it was difficult for me to do that too. And what I have shared with you is that even I can receive the gift to accompany Jesus. It's not just me we accompany Jesus. It's just the King of the universe waiting for me to accompany him. And even I, with all my busy life, with all my weaknesses, is able to receive that gift. I have proved to you that everybody can receive that gift. You can receive the gift to accompany Jesus 1 hour a week. You can, because I can in my weaknesses. So the first thing is the commitment. And second thing is that in order to enable the church to run perpetual adoration. Now, by the way, when we talk about perpetual adoration, there is also a step before that called the partially perpetual. Instead of 7 days, 24 hours, you can start with some time, but it is not 1 single hour together. Now, 1 single hour together is good, but remember what I shared with you. There's a communion service like the Mass, and the other one is the private, personal, talking with Jesus. So everybody is together bringing the prayer, that's good, but that is not yet the private conversation. And the private conversation can only happen when we do it in silence, because everybody is talking to Jesus in their own world. And Jesus is talking to each individual separately, differently. And the only way to do that is to be in silence. And we are talking about perpetual, which I didn't mention before, but I will go to explain that later, is that we are desperately in need of Jesus. We are in a very sinful world. We are like sicknesses, just like myself, spending time fighting. In our sicknesses, we need to see the doctor, just like the emergency. They can't need to move away in order to see the doctor. So we are so much sicknesses, we desperately need to see the doctor. So when we are in sickness, what would the hospital do? They had to leave an emergency room. There's an emergency room in the hospital. Is that right? The emergency room is that anytime people can go to the hospital. Now, if you had adoration 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours a week or 1 hour a month in some of the parishes, how about having the emergency room in the hospital or the hospital open for 1 hour a week? Is that okay? Can the hospital be open for 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month? So we are so much desperate in need of Jesus. That's why we need the perpetual adoration. And sin never stops. By taking turn in an hour, we enable many, many hours. And in that silent moment, being so close to Jesus is a different experience. And that is one step before the 24-hour, 7-hour. And sometimes you can work together with different parishes together to make it perpetual. For example, if you had 7 parishes in the same district, if each parish put 1 day, Monday, Tuesday to Sunday, then all the 7 parishes together is having a perpetual 7-hour perpetual adoration. So that's one step about that. Another step before that is the 40 hours of adoration, which is so important because 40 hours enables to do it in the evening. With 40 hours, you have to do it you have to include the evening. And evening is a completely different experience. In the quiet moment when you had nothing to worry, in the quiet moment, it is so much different. When we do partial perpetual adoration, it is not easy to do the evening because there are no bus, no car, or if there are no public transportation in the evening, such as in some countries, they don't have that. And very often, they can only do it like 12 hours a day. But whenever you do it in a day, make sure those days can cater for different people. Some of them would put it in daytime only, like 8 to 5. Then whoever is working can never go there. So in your planning, you need to include hours after dinner or at the weekend together, a variety of hours. So in order to enable that happen, there was a form given to you during the registration. So we need you to fill that in. Put down what are the times that are available. Now, the first commitment is not just a commitment. Because today, when you are not just looking at the slide, listening to the speakers, you will make sure you can see Jesus. Make sure you can see Jesus in wherever you are seeing. So, and today, especially in the exposition, spend some time to talk to Jesus personally, that you decide to, or at least try to spend an hour every week with Jesus and make that commitment and put down the time that are convenient to you. I mean, that's possible for you, okay? For example, if you're working during the day, you can only do it in the evening or weekend. Put that down in the survey, okay? And then put down which are the parishes that you can go to. It may not be your home parish because you might be able to reach 2 or 3 parishes. Put them down. When we collect all this information, the priest will have all they need. You need the approval from your pastor. But if you tell the pastor, I already have so many people signed up and that they want that time, it would be extremely easy for your pastor to approve it. Okay? So you fill that form. Now, making that commitment is good. But we are what? We are weak, just like myself. We are weak. So is St. Peter. St. Peter made a promise to Jesus never to deny Jesus. But what did he do? He was weak. And when did he become strong again? He was hiding upstairs, right? He was strengthened after the Holy Spirit came. So in the afternoon, we are going to set aside some time. If you made the commitment, you bring the survey form and come to the side. We will have exposition in the middle. But on the 2 sides, you come out and put down your survey form to whoever is collecting it. And you receive the laying of hands from the priest. And we are inviting whoever priest is visiting here to help because of the number of people involved. So they will lay hands one by one, only for those who make commitment and put down the survey form. So that was the third thing we want to accomplish today. Now you make a commitment, you put the form, and you are strengthened by Holy Spirit. So you will be like St. Peter. You will be very strong. Right? Any more worry? Except one. When the Holy Spirit strengthens you, you are strengthened. But we can block the grace from the Holy Spirit when we commit sin. We can block that grace. And of course, Jesus gave us how to overcome that. That is by going to confession every month. You can go more often. And if you go to confession. And today, in fact today, during the break or during the lunch hour, it would be very desirable that the visiting priest, not the host, okay, because they're too busy, can help with hearing the confession. Whoever is visiting here, visiting priest, help so that people can go to adoration during the break or during the lunch. Okay, then you're not blocking the gift from the Holy Spirit anymore. Okay? Now, don't worry if you cannot do the confession today. You can do it tomorrow and do it once every month. Okay? And with that you will see the changes in yourself. Okay? So that is what we are going to accomplish today. Are you okay? How many of you plan to seriously consider making commitment? How many? How many are not? How many are not? Okay, nobody. Nobody is not. So everybody want to seriously consider commitment, okay? Now, to strengthen you to make the decision, I'm going to talk about the importance of the adoration before lunch, okay? Now, you already heard about how important it is, but I'm going to explain it from a layman perspective again. The misuse of the gifts of God is very serious in today's world. More than 50% of the marriage globally end in separation. Never in human being history had marriage been in so high a divorce rate. And there are many others going on. But I point out just some of the data. It is not just the breakdown of the family. Abortion alone accounts for a lot of death. Do you know how many people are killed? It's 3 people every 2 seconds are killed by abortion. The number of people killed by abortion exceeds the total casualty of all the world in human history because of ignorance of people. And they are redefining the marriage, and basically sex is taken for pleasure only. The gift of sex in building up the family is being misused for pleasure only, without regard to anything else, and just for self-pleasure. And this is what happens in the numbers. That is a survey a few years ago in the United States. The 12th grade is basically the finish of the high school, okay? By the time they finish the high school, the percentage, about half of the students are sexually active. That means having sex within 3 months. That is a 12th grade student. And then education is very important, and many parents like to have their children to go to college and university education. And that is another survey of the universities in the United States. But globally, it's not going to be different. As a university student, having sex within a month with at least one person, men, 65%. How about women? 68%. The alarming thing is that not only men are misusing the gift of sex, even women are told to do that. And by the time they finish the university education, 1/4 of them have sexually transmitted disease. And these are the numbers to show you how terrible it is when we do not use the gifts from God in the correct way, in the way that God intended. When we misuse the gift, we are destroying our own human race, sickness, hurt. So many things are happening nowadays. And we are in a situation that all the things, now that some called traditional immorality, are working together. Abortion, contraceptive, homosexual behavior, not the orientation, but the behavior of having sex, to redefining marriage and promoting sex workers and artificial fertilization and change the sex education. All these are working together. They're already penetrating to a lot of the governments. United States, for example, is the battleground is the battleground for spiritual war. Because if the enemy takes the United States, they will influence United Nations. They will have policy to force on other countries. They will force other countries to have abortion. So that was one of the battlegrounds that is happening today. And they are changing the education so that children are taught from the beginning that it is okay for men to become a woman or vice versa or this behavior. Now the church is not teaching us not that they do not exist. They exist. But we had to help them, service them in a better way instead of letting them to use the sex for pleasure. But the church is not allowed to do that because they changed the law and they call that, use the name of discrimination. So all of these are happening, and if this is happening to continue, what is your conclusion? We don't have time to go through all of that, but if you see the giving misuse, you are going to have your own children. It's going to go up like that. And if you're able to teach your children properly, how about your grandchildren? This change had only happened, has only taken a few decades to change. Okay, it will continue to do that. So if human beings continue to do that, there is only one consequence. And what is that? Can you tell me what is that? That's the consequence of human beings. We are hopeless. Human beings speaking, hopeless. This is not a theology. This is just looking at the society and seeing what things are happening. As a layperson, we don't have to go to theology. Just look at what is happening in the society. Look around us. All the changes that are happening. Human beings are hopeless if we continue to do whatever we want to do. And when it is hopeless, what do we need? That is where we need to find God. So St. John Paul II, not be afraid because of the Eucharistic love. And we look at it from different perspectives, from the church and also from the Bible. In the Bible, the lepers, the blind, and they didn't have hope. Is that right? Are they hopeless? If you had leprosy, if you're blind, if you are paralyzed, that's hopeless. And what is leprosy? Leprosy was misunderstood in the past. And nowadays, it is easy to cure it. It's just a bacteria. When you have bacteria, take the medicine and the doctor will tell you, explain to you, and if you take the antibiotic early enough, you're normal. No problem. But if you take the antibiotic late, then there's some damage to your body. And that damage is in the nerve. So when you damage the nerve, you don't feel the pain. So when you don't feel the pain, even though you are cured, when you don't feel the pain, you cannot protect yourself. Because if you cut your finger with the knife, like if you're chopping the vegetable or if you ever cut your fingers, you don't feel the pain, what will you do? You will continue to cut your finger. It's so simple. And if you put your hand on the stove, it's hot, what will you do if you don't feel hot? You will leave your hand there, and you will lose your hand. So you cannot protect yourself, and that is the after effect of the leprosy. Today, we had leprosy everywhere in the soul. The sin of this century is the loss of sense of sin. When we sin, we should know about it, but we intentionally tell ourselves, hey, this is normal. It's okay to do it. Other people do it, let's do it. That is the leprosy. It's not just 20,000 years ago, it's today, including myself and everybody. When we sin, we are like leprosy. And we are like blind. And we are more miserable than the blind, because the blind knows he or she is blind. She is humble enough to see the doctor. But today, people are saying there's no absolute truth. They reject that truth. They refuse the counseling, refuse the help from the church. They're more miserable than the blind. And when blind, they will basically do whatever you want. And when you do whatever you want, what will you do? You will hurt other people. When you use sex for pleasure only, you will hurt other people. And it's so helpless. And sooner or later, you will also be hurt by other people. When you're hurt like that, it is like a paralysis, because you're helpless. So we go back to the Bible. What did the paralyzed do? What did they do? They look for Jesus. It's so simple. The blind was told not to shout so loud, right? Remember in the Bible, the blind, he shouted so loud that the apostle tell him to quiet down. Did he keep quiet? He shouted even louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. And that changed his entire life by looking for Jesus. Today, the leprosy, the blindness in our soul, the only way is to look for Jesus. So the first question, where to look for Jesus? Where? Where? Now you are in a Eucharistic Adoration conference, so you know the answer is Eucharist. But very often people tell the answer is that God is everywhere. God is in my heart, God is everywhere. So if God is everywhere, there's no need to come to church, is that right? So I want to make that very clear. You already listened to all the teaching. I want to make it very clear from the layperson perspective. God is everywhere, and so am I and you in certain perspective. Is that right? If you had a cell phone, you can be anywhere and you talk to anybody. I can talk to my family member even though I am far away from home. And not only that, I can see the picture. I can see the video. I can see my family member in the picture, right? So are we everywhere? Yes. We are everywhere. And since we are everywhere, there's no need to go home, right? You don't need to go home, is that correct? But why do you go home? What's the difference? You hear the voice, you see the image. What's the difference? What's the difference? You want to see the person in flesh. In flesh. And that is the Eucharist. The only place in the entire world where you can look at God face to face in flesh, in blood, in humanity, and in divinity. That's the only place, only religion in the entire world. No other religion you can do that. And it's exactly the same as the way that the apostles are looking at Jesus. Then, in our witnesses, we go to Jesus that will cure my leprosy, cure my blindness to truth. It will cure my paralysis by going to Jesus. Is that right? So that is how many ways of adoration that I mentioned? Probably 6 or 7. So this is a 7. Let me 6. So the 6th, 7th thing is to call adoration, is to receive the healing. We absolutely need to go to Jesus in order to be cured. I was like a leper because I didn't know I was sick. But Jesus changed the way that I love my family. Now but that doesn't end there. Because there are only 1,000 some people in this room. And in your own family, and in these 1,000 people, a lot of them are women, right? When you go to church on Sunday, the majority are what? Women. Where are their husbands? What are you going to do with them? Where are your children? Where? What shall we do? We just said that the world is very sinful and very sick today. Very sick in our soul. We need to look for Jesus. So the cure for the husband, for the children, for parents is to go to Jesus. But are they going to go to Jesus? If you can invite them, that is the best. But good luck. Many of them are not going to come. And how are we going to do? So we go back to the Bible again. Who is going to Jesus? The servant was sick, very sick. Being very sick, can the servant go to find Jesus? Can he? No. Who goes to Jesus? The centurion sent people to go to Jesus. The daughter of the synagogue official was almost dead, according to the Bible. So sick that she was almost dead. When you are so sick that you're almost dying, can she go to find Jesus? Can she walk? Go to Jesus? She couldn't. So who goes to Jesus? Her father. Her father goes to Jesus for her, on her behalf. So your husband, your wife, your children, you may not be able to convince them to come to church and to go to Jesus in adoration. But you go on behalf of them. When we go for them, it will cure their sicknesses. It will change them. It will change so many other people who are not coming to the church. So many people in Malaysia who are not even Catholic. So adoration is not just a personal, private thing with Jesus. It's not just my own salvation. You are participating in the work of redemption. It is why it's so important. The world is very sick. Human beings are very sick. And we are responsible for the future of the human being. If we don't do that, who will? So we are responsible for the salvation of human beings. And we were talking about salvation. That's not just going to heaven in future. It is now, because people are suffering. When they misuse the gift of sex, they are suffering. They're suffering the loss. Children are suffering in family. Children cannot grow up in a family with a father and a mother. So many people are suffering. So the redemption is also talking about now, the life today. With such a responsibility, that is another reason. I talk about 7 things, so this is the 8th thing about adoration, is to participate in the work of salvation for our own children, our own family members, so to help them now. So we go through adoration. We start with a world which is hopeless. We go to the Bible to find out that to find Jesus in the Eucharist is needed. In addition, let us go back to the church again. So we look at the Bible. Now we look at the Pope. The reason that I start considering adoration, my conversion started because St. John Paul II spent an hour every day. And that is when I start to ask the question. I belong to the people who never go to adoration and repeatedly turn down to go to adoration. But because I see him spending an hour, I began to ask that question. The Pope does that. After that, after St. John Paul II, who is the Pope after that? Pope Benedict also spent an hour in adoration every day. How about the third one? After Pope Benedict, Pope Francis. He also spent an hour in adoration. 3 popes in a row are spending an hour in adoration. 3 popes in a row. That is a very important gift in our church to have a pope. Because we don't have the Pope, we will just do it on our own. So 500 years ago, in the Reformation of so many denominations walked away. They are not in union with the Pope. And as a result of that, there are 40,000 different Christian denominations outside the Catholic Church today. And on average, every 5 days, there's a new denomination because everybody can explain the Bible in their own way. So they start a new denomination and continue to divide. So it is so important to be in union with the Pope in our Catholic Church. And God, who chooses the Pope anyway? It is a gift from God. And God chose 3 popes in a row, spending an hour every day in adoration, because the world is so sinful today that we need that gift. So we look at the Bible, look at the Pope, and now we look at the miracles, and we also look at the saints. A lot of saints love Jesus in the Eucharist desperately, which I didn't know before. But when I look at that in a different perspective and learn about it, I learned so many things from the different saints. I shared with my learning with St. Faustina, and there are others that I can share that in the afternoon. So we have the saints, we have the Pope, we have the Bible, we had from the secular perspective, just looking at the world being hopeless. All these are the reason that you need to make a commitment for adoration, because we desperately need redemption. So I am going to share the rest in the afternoon on how I learned from the different ways. I already mentioned about 8 different ways of adoration, and there are several others that I will share in the afternoon. And I remind you to do these 4 things today before you leave. And if you don't plan to do it, you may as well go home now. And if you go home now, you can save a lunch for some people who are willing to make a commitment. Thank you.
Dear brothers and sisters, could you please bear with us for a while and just hold on for 5 minutes? We have a special presentation for you. Okay, just before we break, let me remind you that we still have the Eucharistic Adoration Handbook. This is the St. Alphonsus Liguori's Visit to the Blessed Sacrament and to the Blessed Virgin Mary, where you can find 48 things to do during adoration. All right? Once again, I'd like to thank Father Andrew and Professor Chan for enlightening us, inspiring us, motivating us with Eucharistic adoration. And Father Andrew and Professor Chan will be back later for session 3. Also, once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Aloysius and Jacinta for graciously bringing the Vatican Photographic exhibition to Kuala Lumpur. The exhibition is at the rooftop at the next building. So if you finish your lunch quickly, you can make your way up to the rooftop via the lift. Or if you want to exercise, you can take a pilgrimage, take the stairs up to the rooftop and have a look at the exhibition, all right? So don't forget to be back here later. Since we're starting at 1:30 sharp, please be here at 1:15. No booking of seats. And also, talking about Eucharistic miracles at the exhibition, we have a miracle right here in church that food lunch is for everybody. Yes, initially we couldn't cater for the last minute requests, the last minute registrations, but as always, Jesus will feed us all, right? So we have lunch for everybody, whether you have the red tag or the green tag. Please proceed to collect your lunch outside. And the cafeteria, we would like to reserve that for those 65 years and above. So if you are below 65, younger, please proceed to the porch and have your lunch out there and also enjoy the exhibition. Toilets, once again, is at the next building. Most of you I see are at the ground floor level, but there are toilets on the first floor, second floor, and the floors onwards, all right? So please be back here by 1:15. Thank you.